hat off.
David, I think it's amazing that 25...
You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And it is for the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
I kid. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling Podcast. And this is your host, Mr. Green. And yes, that was just a little fun with WoW. Of course, I wouldn't encourage anybody to turn it off. I mean, how cruel do you think that I am? Anyway, we are just coming off of what feels like a month-long episode of WoW, and they're finally getting to the next season, even though technically their season started 5 episodes ago. We are now on the precipice, the verge of them unveiling their Vegas shows. Of course, this Vegas show will also contain tapings that took place in Vegas sometime last year. And we'll, I guess, finally get to see that, or at least for the vast majority of us out here in TV land. I'm sure there's a few that were actually in attendance who saw it and like, hey, yeah, it was pretty cool, or whatever the case may be. Of course, you could have gone on cagematch.net and got the results. I have gone over the results a couple of times, so there's not a real big slew of surprise there. As a matter of fact, this particular episode, it doesn't really have a gang of surprise attached to it just from start to finish. It really was not a typical review type episode. This was a travel vlog with a couple of things spliced into it. However, we will get to that momentarily. What we are going to do, since there's, I guess, in my eyes, not a lot of show, we're going to go right off into the news, views, and updates, and then we'll go into talking about what that show had in it and maybe a few things in between, and keep our fingers crossed for what comes next. So, with that being said, let us go to the news, views, and updates. And what was happening out there in the world of women's wrestling? Well, I wouldn't say it's a huge amount of stuff, but there's a few things that I found quite interesting. First thing being, Athena. We all know Athena from AEW / Ring of Honor. It appears that she feels that AEW can host an all-women's event. Now, of course they can. I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that AEW, Tony Khan, and their rosters, I say rosters plural, because we're counting between the two, the Ring of Honor roster and the All Elite Wrestling roster. Of course, she says that we have the best division or the best roster in the world, as she should. Everybody does say that, so that's not really shocking. But apparently this is also something that Tony Khan has already thought about, or I guess it's been brought to his attention, I would imagine. This comes from a quote from Athena. She says, in relation to an all-women's event in AEW, I know Tony Khan has absolutely thought about that, I think it's just about timing when it comes to those things. And he's been very open about it. We have the best roster in the world. I know everyone says it, but we actually do have the best roster in the world. We have a very stacked roster, and we have lots of eager women. I know it's something that Tony Khan has in mind, especially with the tag team tournament. I just think that we have baby steps and establish people more to get there. But yes, I do think that this is on his brain. And it has been on his brain since I have been in AEW, so I know it's just about timing. Well, that would be an interesting thing if they went off and they did that. As we know, there is a slew of talent that's in AEW. Now, do I go as far as to say that it's the best roster in the world? Well, I mean, that's, of course, is debatable. All of those things are always debatable. But let's just look at some of the people that they do have. Athena being, one. She's the one that brought this up. And Mercedes Moné and Alex Windsor, Riho, Tony Storm, Statlander. I mean, they have a very, very stacked roster. I think Purrazzo is still there. Unfortunately, I was about to say Kiera Hogan, but I think Hogan has already left. Thekla, Shirakawa, they have not just names, they have names that some wrestling fans would recognize and feel very comfortable wanting to invest their time and their effort to watch that. And we always know that Tony Khan is willing to do it. I don't even think that hearing Athena or reading Athena say that was a necessary component. Tony Khan has shown that he is willing to do this. He's willing to back it up. Just in the idea that, and we're going to talk about this too, the tag team, women's tag team titles were already purchased. They were just sitting around until he's like, until the timing was right, which is basically echoing what Athena was talking about just here. So I am not going to be remotely shocked if they turn around in a couple of months like, all right, we're having our all women's such and such. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. However, I do think that, much like I said with WWE and Evolution. See, I'm thinking about the group when they had the song and the guy was singing it. Anyhow, go listen to the open lyrics of Evolution's theme. You know what I'm talking about. But Evolution, the same thing I said there is I don't know if you're in the position of a WOW that you necessarily want for another major promotion to do something like that. Not that it's going to affect their business directly. I would not imagine that it would. But what will begin to happen, the more that the larger companies start placing their women front and center in events such as that, is that it pushes WOW down the ladder without trying. And not just pushes them down the ladder, it makes them come off, whether people agree with it or not, because I'm sure there's some WOW fans, the hardcores that will debate it to the bitter end. That WOW's got the best roster in the world or whatever. But they would be pushed down just out of perception. The perception of AEW is that it's the, all due respect to them, the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world. Therefore, they must have better talent. WWE is perceived as the number 1. Well, they are not perceived as, they are the number 1 wrestling promotion on the planet. Therefore, their women's division is presented and assumed and perceived as the top women on the, in the wrestling world. The further that goes along, it makes WOW 3rd or 4th place. at best. It is all the reasons why when the Evolution came around, it's like, I'm not sure that they want that to take place. I mean, will it affect them directly? No. Is it going to hurt them for them to run the Evolution pay-per-view? No. WoW is going to exist. WoW is going to do what it's doing, and as long as there's a genie bus around, WoW ain't going anywhere. She can continue to pump money into that thing as long as she draws breath. And if you're not worried about a bottom line, it's probably not going to make any difference. But to have AEW host an all-women's event, for that matter, for them having a women's tag team bracket, it begins to cause a rift in the pro wrestling hierarchy. That's probably the best way I can put it. And without trying, just because they're there, is going to slot them just above some of these other places that I've already done it. WoW won't be the only one, but that's WoW's bread and butter. Whereas MLW and NWA, that's not necessarily their bread and butter. It's just going to shuffle them down. Whereas the NWA Women's Tag Team Championships were probably perceived as, maybe number 3 in the tag team women's world, following WWE and TNA. Well, now they're probably going to be like number 4. But, hey, that's just the way that it goes. And if they're number 4, WoW's probably going to be number 5 or 6. Not bad in the world, mind you, but that's just probably how they're going to be seen. Speaking of AEW's tag team championships, or women's tag team championships, the tournament brackets have been revealed. And we've seen the belts, which are basically clones of the tag team titles that they already have. That's one thing I really wish both wrestling companies would stop doing right now. Like, if they have one for the men, they have to just make a smaller version of the same thing for the women. Let them have their own identity. Let them have their own design for their own thing. It doesn't have to be a clone of the same belt. Anyhow, let's get past that and let's take a look at the bracketing that they have. Now, bear in mind, just across the board in the world, there's not a lot of dedicated women's tag teams that exist on a national stage. So you take that with a grain of salt. Some of them will probably form just because of this, but it's not a lot of them. But who do we have in this tournament? And do I expect the tournament to be good? That's one of the funny things, because I expect it to be consistent. But I don't know if I expect it necessarily to be good from start to finish, because AEW does have its little quirks here and there. But we won't go into the quirks. Who is in the tournament? Well, let's start off with this. Queen Aminata and Jamie Hayter will be taking on the Sisters of Sin, Julia Hart and Sky Blue. That is one bracket. Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron will be going up against the double champion combination of Ring of Honor Women's Champion Athena and TBS champion Mercedes Moné. More on her later. The third bracket, Alex Windsor and Riho will be taking on Timeless Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa. And in the final bracket, we have Penelope Ford and Megan Bain taking on the team of Ty J, Anna J, and Ty Mello. Well, maybe I should have said Ty Mello and Anna J. Either way it goes, you know who I'm talking about. So that is the official bracket, and it will begin, as of me recording this, it will begin next week. I have no predictions as far as this goes. I can tell you that I hope I hope and assume that Aminata and Hayter will go over the Sisters of Sin. I assume that Monet and Athena will go over on Willow and Harley Cameron until they have a falling out of some sort. That's my guess, because they would probably be considered the favorites just between the two of them. You got two people that have held on to their championships for a ridiculously long amount of time. Why are they even in this tournament? I mean, Nina. Okay, wrong person. Mercedes Moné. Where is she at? 12 belts now? Does she need another one? Anyhow, like I said, more on her later. I expect Bane and Ford to go over Tajay, and I expect Timeless, Tony Storm, and Mina Shirakawa to go over Windsor and Riho. That is my best guess, but I haven't kept up with all of it for me to be able to say, this is in the bag. Who knows? But it will be interesting. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. It will be interesting how they present their women's tag team championships. Will it be a featured act on a show week in and week out? I mean, they have so many championships already. I can't imagine that is going to get a lot of airtime or play. Speaking of that, you would think that maybe having an all-women's event, or at least an all-women's show, might be the thing for him to do. AEW has some interesting times coming up on it. They have some interesting times ahead of it. Especially considering that Warner Brothers Media has, basically put themselves up for sale, and that's been the only place that Tony Khan has wanted to go. He didn't even want to try to sell Ring of Honor off to a different location at the time because he was loyal to Warner Brothers and Time. Was it Warner Brothers Time Media? But if they are sold and they come across a new group of people who don't care about wrestling, he might be in trouble. But we're not going to wish anything ill on him. We're just, stay tuned and we'll watch, see how that goes. So good luck with that, and early congratulations to whoever walks out as the women's tag team champions. CMLL and Stardom announced a partnership, which is, I imagine, good for the international market. They Stardom, the other women's professional wrestling organization that has a global reach. I know that it sounds good for a while to be like, well, we're the only ones that have it. No, not so fast. It's not like Stardom exists in America. Stardom is presented in America and, produced out of Japan. So there's some global reach that's happening there. We can't say that they're the only ones. They may have to change their statement like we're the only ones with a global reach that exists in America. Then it'll be accurate. But here's the real catch to this this partnership, which basically read: Stardom announces business partnership with Mexico's CMLL. Stardom Co. Ltd. has announced a business partnership with Mexico's prestigious professional wrestling organization, CMLL, which I can't pronounce all of the words that CMLL stands for. Was it Consejo de Lucha Libre? I can't even get all that out. I'm awful. One of these days I'll try a little harder. But anyhow, the real key here is that both of these companies work with AEW. That is going to be the real test right there. They have a partnership that exists between the two of them, and they both have an in on American soil. Never mind the fact that they both, could benefit from having champions sent out to them. I'm surprised that Mercedes Moné has not decided, hey, send me over there so I can win some of their belts. Just pay them a bunch of money so they can drop it. But if they have that, could we see an influx of international or a larger influx of international talent to AEW / Ring of Honor? Would that be the thing? Would they use that as a means to try to separate their particular division from everybody else in the world? We already know WWE's got AAA on lock since they just bought them out. And they're probably not going to be able to overcome that as far as the market in Mexico. That may not happen. But having this might solidify a stronger stand for all parties involved. That is possible. If they can manage to do that, I wish I could say that I believed in Tony Khan enough that he can make something good happen from it. But I will say that it might be at the very least, a shot in the arm. Maybe. Going back to Mercedes Moné, Mercedes 12 belts, or Ultimo Moné, or whatever she decided to call herself. The question has come up and has been kind of bandied about. Is it worth it to the indie promotion to have Mercedes Moné come in and win your belt, whether that be a independent promotion that just happens to have a women's division, or whether that be a indie promotion that is all women's wrestling? Is it worth it to them to drop their belts to Mercedes Moné? Well, that's a yes and a no. And I'm not trying to be non-committal, but truthfully, that's a yes and a no answer. The reason that we can say that is because the one proven element that we know when we have a major star and you're at an independent is having a major star come in from largely national television, whether that's a WWE star or in this case an AEW star. It generally speaking does create more interest in what's going on your show. I mean, there may not be a 2,000 seat bump in people that show up there, but a small bump in the audience is a recognizable bump for most independents. Being that, let's say Mercedes Moné is going someplace that generally draws between 250 to 300 people. But she gets there and they have 500 plus. Well, for the indie promotion, that's good. That is a big thing for them. She, assuming that they didn't have to pay through the nose to have her show up, that might be a good payday or a good house for them. So in that regard, yeah, of course is worth it to them to do that if they don't blow the budget trying to get her. That is a short-term plus. The other side of it is the no. At what point is your championship worth not having on your show? It would probably be an entirely different thing if, let's say, she was the TBS champion. She came to a local promotion, let's just say Shimmer, and she won the Shimmer championship. I'm not even sure if Shimmer still operates, but I'm just using them. And she wins the Shimmer championship, and she shows back up on TV with it. Well, now that might bring attention to Shimmer because it's not fighting for your eyes amongst 11 other belts. But the more of them that she collects and gathers, the less important that individual title happens to be. Again, I get it. If the promotion says, hey, look, it's worth it to have it, then it's worth it for them to have it. And I am in no position to say that it's not, especially considering most indie promotions that I've ever seen, ever been at, ever talked to the promoter, blah, blah, blah. That money that they get in month to month is, quite honestly, a necessity. They might have other revenues besides just the tickets that they sell, but the money that they get for people coming into the door is basically a necessity. So yeah, it's fine for that. In the long term, if they're trying to build a brand or they're trying to, make our titles important or something like that, well, it might lose something when it's just one of. It's not as if you could really run a program with Monet and say, hey, I'm coming after the belt, or I'm showing up on AEW's TV, or, cut a promo and send it to him, or whatever. You lose a little bit in that regard. So it's both positive and a negative. I cannot fault any of these indie promotions that have decided to yeah, sure, let's have her in there and drop the title. Unless one of those promotions is saying that, hey, no, we don't want to do that because I don't want my belt just to be, or my championship to be devalued, or me not have this particular championship to defend for months. Because at this point, some of them have probably not seen their titles in several weeks, if not months. And at what point is she going to give it back? At what point is she going to drop it? Or is it just going to be a case of, well, she didn't come back and defend it, so we're going to have to strip her the title? Well, that does nothing for the persons that operate that promotion. Another small thing, but it's enough for any promotion to take a hit. I'm not saying it's going to put them out of business, but if they're going to have somebody there that's going to, drop the title to Mercedes, and she at no point decides that she wants to drop it back, well, then they may have missed out on something. They got the one good house. If she's not coming back again to do the job, or at least help get somebody else over, even if she didn't do the job, go to a draw, count out, smas, whatever. If she doesn't come back to do something that's going to get the next person on that roster built up or perceived as a bigger deal, as a champion, that maybe they can show up on AEW TV, or maybe they might go to a national product at some point, then you have to start questioning, is it worth it in the long term? Just a little food for thought. And, I went through the tag team brackets of AEW, but I forgot to mention one other thing, that there is another tag team out on the independent circuit. That tag team is Nixon Newell and Miranda Alizé. Now, Newell people will know from WWE television as Tegan Knox. And she is out right now, and she is going around. Well, I shouldn't say she. They are now taking bookings as a team. As far as I can tell, there is no unified team name that they are using, but they are taking bookings as a team. So that could be interesting to see right there. Who is going to pick them up? Who's going to bring them in? Who's going to let them come in as the tag team champions? Well, no, I shouldn't say tag team champions. Come in as a tag team and take on their potential champions, or at least top talent in their roster. Time will tell. It's not a lot that's going on in that, but they did bring up the fact that they had worked each other for several dates on the indies. I think they're legitimately a couple inside and outside of the ring. So that's not uncommon news. So there we have it. Hopefully they might be able to give an influx to some tag team wrestling on the women's side, because it desperately needs it. And I'm not saying that to any particular promotion. I'm just saying that in general. It desperately needs it. That's one of the things that women's wrestling has kind of never been able to fix. The lack of quality tag teams that exist. Not saying there ain't none out there. It just don't have enough, and they're not in a collected location for people to say, oh man, this is the best women's tag team that I've ever seen, or whatever the case may be. In fact, I would say most people, if it didn't happen in WWE, it didn't happen at all. So we will see if this helps, or they can create that first domino maybe to go against some other quality tag teams, and perhaps, not stress, perhaps start a resurgence in that particular genre. And as we've gone through 12 belts, Monet, and the tag teams, and the merging of, I shouldn't say merging, partnership with CMLL Stardom, and potential for all-women's AEW event. What else is out there? Well, here's what's out there. And this one comes directly from the WOW website. Yeah, look at that. It is titled Dave McLane taking on the WOW Women of Wrestling live TV future and filming from Fremont Street Experience, and praises Jeannie Buss and AJ Lee. You notice they say AJ Lee now instead of AJ Mendez. I guess since she's shown back up to WWE and she's re-engaged herself as AJ Lee, they have to make sure that people know what they're talking about. But there's an article on their page, and I thought that I would go through some of this because I found it interesting, first off. Secondly, there are things there that I agree with, surprisingly enough, and then there's things that I'm like, maybe not. This is written by Scott Fishman, and he writes, now this is in SE Scoops, by the way, but he writes, in many ways, WOW picked up where the beloved brand left off and evolved to the syndicated series we see today. With the show recently starting its 4th season, McLane isn't one to rest on past successes. He has a big goal in mind to take WOW to the next level. Now, I'm going to stop there for a second just to say that I have heard that with one of the podcast interviews that he's done. So this is not something that's just out of the blue or new or something like that. He has given credit where it's due. He has talked about this in previous locations and reports. So I can't turn around like, he's not trying to do that. Yeah, it seems like it's pretty legitimate. Another vision will be realized for promoter Dave McLane when WOW Women of Wrestling takes over Fremont Street Experience in Las Vegas. The WOW Superheroes will perform under the iconic canopy for shows October 14th to 15th, October 21st and 22nd. Now, we already know, I'm pausing here for a second. We already know that those things aren't taking place, but we'll continue. McLane has always championed all-female presentations, going all the way back 40 years with the trailblazing gorgeous ladies of wrestling glow. For the go-getter businessman, eventually transitioned into a live format will maximize the audience and elicit engagement. He continued, everything from social media to merchandise to marketing to superheroes has been hampered in the fact that it's not live. We've got to go live. I was at another wrestling event, and when I flew in, I even went to a WNBA game in Vegas. I'm watching the fans interact with their phones in real time. It's just a great experience. It's an engagement and family environment, through your phone with technology. And to take part in that, we've got to get live. Conversations have been ongoing with one network that has interest in testing a live format. But McLane doesn't want just any network. He recalled meeting with executive Jeannie Buss when he was doing World Roller Hockey League. McLane added, I remember when I was launching that with ESPN and it sent them and their then president Steve Bornstein, and they said, let's try it by putting on 1 or 2 roller hockey events. I came back and said, we can't do it unless we go all in, because with one test, you're not going to learn anything. It can't be one event. You have to see how it goes over time and be committed to it. So we're looking for that right partner now. Okay, pause. I partially agree with that. I do think that the WoW at some point needs to go live. Now, what I don't think that they need to do, they probably are not in a position to be trying to go live week to week. That I don't think that they want to do. First off, they would have to find another network. They wouldn't be able to go live in a syndicated environment. That's a logistic nightmare. Airs at 5 this place, 10 another, 1 o'clock in the morning one place, 3 the next. So that just is not going to happen. They would have to have a network that is willing to say, we're going to do this and we're going to go live. Now, the problem with trying to do that is that there is a cost to trying to do it live week to week. It's probably an easier thing just to tape it and then edit and send it out. But for what he is trying to get, sure, live would be the way to go. Whether WoW is in a position to do that or not is a different issue. I don't know if WoW under a live format is where they want / need to be right now. Now, the first thing that I would say just off the top is that whomever they got coming out of that WoW training camp, the ones that just answered the ad and backstage and are more or less trained to okay, memorize this match. We got 5 days for you to get it down, so memorize this and then we'll do it when it's live. It's going to hurt them the most. Those are the ones that's not going to be able to shine through that format. It'll look good for a while, but some of them are going to be rendered down to the same thing that they did when they had a pay-per-view. It's fine when it's edited, but when you go live, they have to do things to smoke and mirror the fact that some of them are incapable of having a match that goes beyond 3, 4, 5 minutes. I'm talking bell to bell. So if that's what they're looking at, they would probably have to start leaning on heavily the ones who've already done this. The ones who came out of wrestling locations, and I'm going to say that all due respect to whatever training camp that WoW has created. But the ones that were trained elsewhere, the ones that have been conditioned to be in front of the live pro wrestling audience, that's the difference. They could probably pull it off. But then when you start getting to the other ones, it might be a little shaky. I'm not going to say that they can't. But if history has taught me anything with WoW, 80% of their roster, the ones that they just went and trained in and all right, it's time to go and do this thing live, it didn't work. It didn't work then. And they haven't really changed the format of what they've done all that much. The only thing that's really changed since 2001 till now is that they do hire more people that are actual pro wrestlers by trade. They've gotten them. And it makes it easier for them to come in and hit the ground running. But I'm going to use WoW Unleashed, which was the name of their pay-per-view years ago, as an example. That show that led into that pay-per-view was everything that they do right now. We're just going to tape it, and then we'll air it, and that'll draw the interest, and people will go for it and order this pay-per-view, right? It didn't draw any interest. First off, they put it in a place that was way too big for them. They tried to fill out the Great Western Forum, which wound up having to be heavily papered. It was on pay-per-view, which probably was I'm not even going to say probably, was a costly expense at that time. 90% of the people that were on that roster were not ready for that environment. They didn't have the interest out of the fans because no one there had gotten over it. Any of this sound familiar? So I don't think it's just a case of, well, we just got to find a network that's willing to do it. Sure, they might be able to get somebody to do it, and they'll be more than willing to put them on probably a smaller network, and there's plenty of those. And they'll probably be fine putting it on, but if they aren't able to justify the amount of eyes that's watching this, they probably will not get a live slot. Not on the merit of the show, at least. Now, Jeannie Buss can walk in there and pull some strings and whatever. She can pay for it out of her pocket. She's a billionaire. And as long as she's willing to throw money at the wall, then that can happen. But I'll use Vice. When was the last time you heard WoW bring up the fact that they're on Vice? The last time that I looked at the ratings for Vice TV as it related to WoW, it literally showed about 5,000 people in the country looking at that. No one there is over. No one there is presented as a star. It is a masterful job that he does with smoke and mirrors and sales. So I am never going to bet against his ability to get it on the air. Whether it can maintain his spot or not is a different issue. But let's continue on with the rest of this, because he did say stuff in here that, again, I agree with. In this next segment that I'm about to read, I absolutely agree with a good chunk of it. He is also a realist when it comes to taking WoW on the road. McLane thoughts process is to go live first and then think about touring. If we did it today, we'd be dead meat financially, he explained. The cost to put it up, to take it city to city, would be very difficult. We'd be dead meat. But that is the ultimate goal, to take it out and be in different cities. The UFC even struggled with that. They would love, I'm sure, financially to be in one location and do their UFC fights, but their president and CEO Dana White once mentioned, and I agree with him, that to grow the brand and touch the fans, he's obligated to take it out into the marketplace and take it into different cities. We need to do the same. Pause. Yes, I agree. If they tried to do that right now, it would be a fool's errand to try to go city to city because they haven't built that. The only way that I could say that might work for him, even in this environment, is if, and I doubt that they would ever do it, is if that they were willing to take the small building. And even then, just the expense of moving the ring and lighting and this, that, and the other, that would probably make up for it in financial loss to begin with. But I say small buildings because they are not going to fill out an NBA-size arena. They are not going to fill out an arena that the WNBA plays in right now, which is generally about 3,000 to 5,000 seats. An armory, a high school, stuff like that. And I'm not saying that to be like, taking a shot at them. I'm just saying realistically, that's the type of building that they probably should be in. And they would have enough money to doctor it up to make it look good on television if they really tried to do it. Or if they went to, and again, I doubt that they're going to do this, if they tried to go to the locations that catered to small wrestling promotions. But if they aren't able to fill out those locations just for the small wrestling promotion, like there's a couple of them that have really been good for that. Going back to the 90s with ECW, that was one of the brilliant things that Paul Heyman ever did. They're not going to get in Madison Square Garden, so he made his own. It's the ECW Arena. He branded that thing so much to the point that even today is looked at as like with reverence. It's a mural painted on the wall. now the 2300 arena, but still, same deal. He branded that. It became their thing. And now almost every other independent, when they're in the Northeast, want to run that building. And there's several other ones out there across the country that have more or less done the same thing. The Landmark here, a Center Stage here. There's, I don't know if Dory Funk, the Funkatorium, still does their thing. It was at one point. Then the fairgrounds in Tennessee. You know, there's places to go now. Whether they would want to do those places or not, because they might feel it's beneath them, I don't know. But trying to go out into a large place would be just an absurd thing to do. Now, as a side note, I also think that this is something that needs to be taken into account when he starts talking about, well, you know, the UFC decided they need to go out. Yes, that was true. They did need to get out and put their stuff in front of people. However, there is one element that is not being brought up as far as getting their product in front of people. That was the Ultimate Fighter. The Ultimate Fighter reality show, when reality shows were all the rage on TV. Never mind the fact that it was following a hot WWE at that point. It gave UFC the ability to put their name, their brand, some of their stars in front of people's faces before they ever saw a fight. That alone cannot be negated. It is not just as simple as let's get in a truck and take this place out and go into these buildings and blah, blah, blah. It's not as simple as that. That is part of it. And who am I to say that it wouldn't work if they just was really to double down on it and just travel all over the country. But the Ultimate Fighter was a big thing for them. It helped the rise of the popularity of the UFC, because it's more or less the same principle that the WWE had years ahead of them. Not in a reality TV outlet, by the way, but I can remember looking at that cartoon that aired on Saturday mornings back in the day, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' and Wrestling, and it didn't strike me until later on, probably years. It trained me to know who those people were before I ever saw a single match. Turn on the TV, I see him. Hogan, everybody knew. He was a celebrity. The rest of them I was introduced to through that cartoon, and then I knew, oh, hey, Bobby Heenan, Tito Santana, Superfly Jimmy, Junkyard Dolly. Like it trained you to know who they were before you saw a single thing. That's what the Ultimate Fighter did. Not necessarily for the people, but you certainly knew what the UFC was by the time they did it. And of course, I think they were paid by Spike TV. So, they didn't really have anything to lose. I think they covered their production costs up until they got their feet, underneath them and start running and getting some reasonable ratings and whatnot. But that right there, the willingness to pay their own costs to be there on that show, what was it, Spike? I think that was Spike TV at the time. To be on Spike TV and have that product essentially act as a weekly infomercial for UFC, you cannot underscore that. WoW doesn't have that yet. I don't know if they need a reality TV show. I don't know if they need to create some cartoon. I don't know if they need to create a sitcom or anything else in between. I just know that to try and do that without some sort of leverage walking into it might be hurtful to them overall. Again, do I agree with that they would be damaged? Sure. But I've also said that they needed to dip their toes in the water just to be able to see whether there's interest in them at all. And they should be able to do that in a non-expensive way. I mean, they shouldn't have to dig a money pit in order to try that. This could be another case of whether they believe it's beneath them or not. The pitch that I gave many episodes ago was find a small location. Set that thing up for streaming, which is not that difficult to do. You might have to cover the expenses of the building rental, the lighting, the streaming service or what have you, and of course the talent. But do one and stream it on YouTube. And look at what you get in turnaround within 24 hours. We're not talking about how you get it weeks and days down the line. Within 24 hours of that stream, live, and the 24 hours following it. That's when you need to test your waters. Because if you can't get people to tune into a live free show on YouTube, you're wasting your time doing it anywhere else. So, grain of salt. You don't have to listen to me, but that's just my 2 cents. Continuing on with the I didn't even finish the article yet. Continuing on. McLane credits working with Bus as a great partner, someone who's been WOW's biggest cheerleader. The controlling owner and president of the Los Angeles Lakers saw the importance of launching an all-female training facility to build homegrown talent. Under the leadership of veteran Selena Majors, the promotion continues to bring in new faces that bring the right balance of athleticism and pizzazz. By the way, the tagline for WOW Superheroes created by Jeannie McLane revealed. All right, we're going to skip that because I've heard that a ridiculous amount of times. Yes, and she says the same thing. Comic books, real life comic book heroes, they should be superheroes, blah, blah, blah. All right, so going to the next paragraph. When it comes to WOW's early beginnings in its current run, McLane remains grateful to have AJ Lee, someone who came in as executive producer and commentator during the first season. She took a chance with us and came to WOW, he said. I think she is proud of the product. She'll be on that special with Jeannie Buss, the one that we just saw. I wanted to get her in the ring with WOW, but the timing wasn't right. She wanted to make sure her body was at 10 in conditioning and in shape. She was writing movies and doing comic books, and we were able to get her... What? She was writing movies and doing combos when we were able to get her engaged. Oh, no, not engaged in the WOW. I'm sorry. I saw that. I was like, engaged? What are you talking about? All right, yeah, I misread that. Just coming out the comic books and going into the movies, it was so fun. All right. So, yeah, I'm sure that they're very happy with being able to bring up AJ Mendez, AJ Lee now. But we'll go to the end of this and see if it makes any sense. As for what's to come on WOW, McLane looks forward to digging a little deeper into backstories of the superheroes. He's also teased some fiery competition to come to WOW Trio Tag Team Champions, Coach Campanelli, Candy Crush, and Glory Glitter. When it comes to WOW's early beginnings in his current run, McLane remains grateful to have AJ Lee, someone who came in as executive producer and commentator during the first season. She took a chance on... Well, I just read that. Why did they repeat this? This is stupid. All right, so I'll just give my 2 cents on that right now because I have heard from 2 people on 2 opposing sides of how they felt about AJ Mendez when she was there. One said that she was fine, but by the time she left, she checked out. The other one was like, she didn't feel like she cared when she got there at all. And I think I talked about it. I can't remember, but let's just put this in perspective. Both of those things can be true. I'm pretty sure I said that. Both of those things can be true. She could have not been engaged in it because she did check out. And the statement that I was told was she learned, she being AJ Mendez, that she wasn't going to be able to make any significant changes there. That it was somebody else's sandbox and she was just a talent within it. And I would imagine that if you were sold on the idea that you were going to be able to come in as a producer and maybe hire some people or help change the way this, that, or the other's done or something along those lines, then yeah, you would check out by the time you get to it and you realize that none of this is going to happen. Yeah, it's easy to come on and do an article, be like, yeah, she took a chance on us. We love that she came and this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's great. But you're not going to convince me. Like her having a match is one thing. Because I did say that they should have offered whatever they had offered to try to get in the ring. I thought it was a long shot just because it was WoW. All due respect to WoW. I just didn't think that AJ Mendez was going to want to, for lack of a better term, alter her legacy by wrestling in a WoW ring. I know that may sound like a shot at WoW, but honestly, I just did not perceive that. It would have been greater if she did it for the company. But having come from WWE's TV and no one that has been in a significant role, again, all due respect to the ones that left out of WWE and went to WoW, most of them were not big players. I'm not saying that they're not talented, but they weren't presented that way on WWE's television. When they showed up, I mean, they're just another face. They weren't anything significant. They didn't change the path of WoW, or they didn't move the needle just by their sheer presence. AJ Lee probably could have. But that didn't happen because she didn't apparently want to wrestle. Then I said the next thing. All right, well, then you should be doing an interview as to the how, the when, the why, the stuff that the wrestling fan wanted to know, and you have the ability to ask and try to get done. I can't imagine that she would turn that down, but let's just say that she did. Then you got the commentating booth. If he really felt that I want to make sure that, we get the best out of AJ Mendez on our TV, if he really felt that way, he'd have pulled himself out of that commentating booth and let Dickie and Mendez do their thing. That would have happened if that were, was something that they were trying to do. Instead of being there and talking over her every chance that he got. There was no way that was going to work out. The second you saw it as a 3-person booth, like, that wasn't going to work out. It's easy to be in hindsight, but like, man, she was great. And we was, grateful to have her. And I was like, but I'm not sure that she did much of anything. Other than them being able to use her name and footage that they shot with her 2 or 3 years ago in this episode. It just didn't seem like the effort to try to make that thing work out was there at all, in my opinion. So this article that they have here is somewhat presented a little odd because there's sections of it, if you just read it straight through, it is going to repeat because it's not I guess it's not labeled to the photo that it had. So anyway, let's get the last statements that were made here, and then we'll just move on. All right. He says, "This is Santana Garrett's run," McLane continued. "I didn't realize it until we interviewed her in Florida, but she has been with every wrestling organization. All the wrestling organizations, including WWE, and won championships everywhere. She's somewhat started her career on a major level with us with WoW. Her dad, Kenny G, participated before his passing. He was able to come to WoW events and see his daughter. This is like a full circle with her back at WoW. I know she would like to make a run for that WoW title. Tormenta is back from Mexico with the championship. Paola Mayfield, who has a reality show in 90 Day Fiancé and Amazon's The GOAT. So it's going to be a great season and lots of great competition." All right. Now, that is the end. And I will just say, I don't know what any of that has to do with it being a great season and having lots of great competition. Okay, Paola Mayfield is on a reality show. How does that equate to a great season, a great competition. It's great that Tormenta's, quote, we're going to put some air quotes around that, Tormenta's back. I honestly don't know. And I don't even know what this last statement here was made for. Santana Garrett is an interesting talent that's on that roster. And she's wonderful and everything, but she has not been presented, in my opinion, well. If there's any one thing that she has lacked for whatever reasons, right or wrong, whatever it happens to be to get her to whatever her next level is, that it has not been found. And I do not believe that she is going to find it in WoW. WoW makes her just be generic babyface number 5 or wherever she is in the lineup. But they just make her present as just generic babyface. Smile. Never have a problem with things that go wrong unless you're talking about it on Instagram. But as far as TV is concerned, you're just, nothing bothers you. Gosh, I didn't get the title shot, but oh well, I'll just do better next time. Oh, well, you came and begged me for a title shot because your daughter, well, we'll give it up to you, but give you a title shot next time. Somebody break up her championship run at Classmaster. She never even brings it up, talks about it or what. She's just bland. And she isn't the only one. They have a babyface problem. They've always had a babyface problem. Which goes back to when we go into this little article that I just read. I don't know if those things help sell the idea of how good or bad WoW is. They do need somebody that they can hang their hat on. They need somebody that they can, hey, we have this person or that person. But they don't create that. Nor do I feel like they give the opportunity for some to grow. And if they're told just to do, as I say, and just go out there and tell them how I like it, and give me a shot, and I love you, and fans cheer for me, and whatever generic babyface crap that they're told to do, if that is what's happening, then they're hindering them. Santana Garrett is like the hallmark flag bearer of that. She could probably, in some other place, with another promoter, with somebody else that might be able to sit down and get something else out of her. But in WoW, I think that she's stalling out. She's not growing. She's not going anywhere. And then, worst, I'm not going to say worst case scenario, but one of the things that didn't help is they basically created a clone of her. They had Americana come in, and you cannot tell me that was not directly inspired by Santana Garrett. Her entire look. Not just her entire look, the finish that she did. She did the same damn thing. Initially. So, no. She needs something else. I know that he speaks highly of her, and I know she speaks and feels highly of WoW and McLane. And maybe she's perfectly fine and comfortable being at WoW. And if she is, and if any of them are, then great. You don't have to prove nothing to nobody, including me. But if her goal is to be a broader star, I do not feel like WoW is the place that she's going to accomplish it. That's just me. Anywho, now that we've done that, let's take a break, like I would normally do, and then we'll go off into our talking the talk and musical segments just to give myself a little break, on the microphone here. Then we'll go back and ramble on through what was their wonderful Las Vegas commercial. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, well, well. Look who crawled out of the slums right in time for Halloween. The Detroit Barbie herself, Marina Tucker. With your perfect hair and your perfect life. You just had your perfect wedding with your perfect husband. You must feel so special. Look at you go. Wrapping yourself in pink and talking like you're untouchable. Marina, don't you forget, there's no one who knows you better in that ring than me. And that's why this Sunday at PWA, I am going to get so much pleasure out of making you bleed and taking your title. And thanks to me, you're going to be walking out of there with one less perfect thing in your life.
I've been reading up on a lot of history recently because, as you know, if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Or in my case, you're fated to repeat it. You see, on August 9th, I am going in a triple threat match against Tiffany Grady and Katie Thorne, and it is going to be for the VPW Women's Championship, a championship I've held in the past. Now, VPW has been around for quite some time, but they've only ever had one other woman hold that championship twice, and that was Chris Statlander. That's quite a legacy to live up to. And don't get me wrong, Katie is a cut from the garden. No one ever expected to blossom the way she has, and Tiffany can hold her own. She's even a champion in some of my old stomping grounds. I'm gotta say, between the two of them, I am very impressed. But at the end of the day, there can only be one women's champion, and that is going to be the unwilting Ow! That was a good take. That was a really good take. What the
as you may have heard in that Talking the Talk, you saw, I guess we would refer to her on WoW as Princess Ozzy, but Simone Williams elsewhere. That is one of the cases of somebody needing to be someplace else in order to explore their personality or whatever it is that they have to offer to the rest of the world. And I say bravo to her. I wish the promo had a bigger punchline at the end. I don't mean like a joke, but I'm just more impact at the end of it. But hey, it is a process. And I'm glad that she's willing to attempt the process. That she has another level of her that she wants to present to the world. She's got a song to sing and she's going to sing it, as some people have said. And this is not an insult, but I wanted to just point out, it's like the differences between her personality are vast between Princess Ozzy and Simone, because Ozzy was just as bad as Santana Garrett as far as just being generic and smile and I'll just take what I get. I don't get that impression out of Simone. If Princess Ozzy was presented as the girl next door, then Simone Williams would be the slut down the street. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. Anyhow, this episode of WoW is episode 406, titled Desert Dreams. The air date was October the 18th. The chronological number is 162. And I will just say up front, I didn't even bother to try to keep this in order. So if there's something that is out of order from where it aired, that's why. I just didn't think that it was particularly important. Just to be completely honest with you, it is everything that I said at the beginning. This is a travel log for Vegas, and it happens to have a couple of clips of their earlier documentaries spliced into it. This is like 2 months worth of repeats, very few new matches, and now you got an episode that doesn't have a single match on it. And I know there are people that's there like, oh, come on, this is, well, particularly Katie Marie in her comments on their YouTube page. Yeah, we're just talking about the history of Vegas. Basically saying that having this is not some sort of bad thing. And I guess technically it's not. But most wrestling fans, believe it or not, do not tune into a wrestling show to get something completely different than what they tune in for. I'm sure people watched some of this in the assumption that they would at least get a match. And you didn't get any of that. What you got was Katie Marie and David McLane, and they're more or less just hosting, the Fremont Street experience through the eyes of WoW. I mean, that's the only way I can really describe it. They do their show introduction. They do pitches for Vegas, and yes, he just starts. Oh, we did this such and such. We was there and being in Fremont and this location, that location. I mean, it's just kind of tossed out there within the course of them talking. So I was like, all right, well, we know that they're pitching for Fremont. I can only assume and I can only hope that Fremont paid them some money to do this. If they didn't, then I don't know what it was for. I mean, it might sound nice, but if they didn't get anything out of it financially, they should have just put some matches on. This feels like the third or fourth time I've seen this. And like I said, this is a documentary that they've already aired, I want to say about 2 years ago. And in fairness, it's informative if you've never seen it. But it bored me because I had. And I'm not interested in seeing this anymore. And I'm going to assume that there's somebody out there who never saw it and enjoyed it. So I can't say that it's bad. But for the people that did watch it, it probably wasn't that engaging. This was it was part Wild documentary, part Vegas promotional package. Spliced in with a little bit of lifestyle video segments. And then they start off at the beginning. There's another one of the foreshadowing things. David, you got to try the zip line over here. Whoa, fans, I'm not going to do that. Don't be tuning in for that. So you knew the second that he said it that he was going to get on it. I don't know why anybody would think anything less than that. Because what am I going to include this in a tape program for if I have no intentions of getting on that? I would say, all right, cut that out. I'm not good on that. But he left it in, so he did. This episode, shows lots of old footage across multiple incarnations of WoW. Tessa Blanchard footage was conspicuously not seen. It's the one person on there that I kept my eyes open for. I was like, I wonder if they're going to show anything from Tessa Blanchard. I didn't see any. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it. They showed AJ Mendez. They made sure to get her in there. But nobody else. They even had stuff dating back as far as Terry Gold auditioning, which is who watching right now knew who Terry Gold was. And that's nothing on her, but she didn't have a lengthy wrestling career. She probably, in the entirety of her wrestling career, wrestled like 20 matches or less. And most of that was in WoW. She's a 2-time WoW champion, but what does it mean? That goes back to me saying, that footage would have been a lot more impactful had it been somebody that was perceived as a big star. She's a nice enough woman, and she's a, lovely enough woman on camera, but it didn't mean anything as it related to star power. We did get to see a young Lana Star there, which did, for those that was around me at the time, watching, like, hey, is that the woman that's on the show now? So yeah, that's her. So, it was lots of bodies on the screen, not lots of stars. They did cut into the whole women's evolution thing, and this is why I said it started to get me, because now you're cutting in footage of Jeannie Buss telling the same story that she's told every time that she sat down with anybody and talked about WoW. I mean, I get that she might have been on a press junket doing this, possibly, but my dad sat me down, made me watch Billie Jean King, this, that, and Title IX, blah, 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 blah. And I don't mean to try to, minimize that. I've just heard it so much. McLane and Marie inserts are basically just there to sell Las Vegas. At some point, they do sell one match. They sell the match between Big Rigs and Bourbon and Miami Sweet Heat, which originally took place September 28th, 2024. So a year later, we're going to see this thing. Sweet Heat have a promo, which is fine. It's not the best, but there's conviction there, and Laurie does good. Lindsay said something like, they should have disqualified them for being there. Like, disqualified them for what? They weren't in the match. But hey, again, like I said, it was fine if you're just going off of them trying to do something. The only thing that I really had a major issue there was when they cut back to McLane trying to justify And let me explain, fans, that Big Rigs and Bourbon got the match because everybody was appalled. We were all appalled at what happened to poor Holly Swag. I wrote, seriously? You pretty much endorsed it. The entire episode was built on him calling her a troublemaker. She's the weak link of the team. Go back and watch the episode. He's agreeing with Lana Starr. The weakness that she's talking about is Holly Swag, you know. The pot stirrer. She basically got what she had coming to her. Now I'm supposed to be a Paul. This is the problem that I have with WoW. It is so inconsistent. What story are you trying to tell? This is why I had a problem with the match to begin with. The match could be fine, but him talking through it doesn't help because it didn't sync up with whatever story that they was trying to tell. It didn't sync up with it. And that's a problem that they need to fix. If they have any aspirations of going anywhere or doing anything else, like, why would anybody watch this? Why would anybody care what happens to Holly Swag following looking at 2 weeks of that? It wasn't even just it happened in the cage. They re-aired it. So you got to hear all of that all over again. You got to hear him carrying on about what an awful human being Holly Swag was. She knocked out her own mother. I mean, come on. He endorsed all of that right down to the final frame of that show. So now we're in Vegas and like, oh, well, you know, we're all appalled about that. What are you appalled about? You weren't appalled then. So I'm going to take the time to say something positive about him just because I don't want to just come off like that. But the commentating that he does is not good. What I will say he's good at, this is his environment. This episode here, this is David McLane's environment. Salesman, host. He probably should be hosting a game show. But this is where he shines. When you just got to sell some stuff and smile and, you know, look pleasing on camera, that's what he's good at. I don't know why the story of whatever is going on in the wrestling ring, particularly when it's his own show, gets derailed off of him. But it does. If they could just make, or not they, because it would have to be his decision, but if he could just accept that, you know, it probably would be better for me to hire somebody else to do this instead of sitting here. It is the reason that I said that at times he's a detriment, but it's never going to change because he would have to be self-aware of it. It's a detriment to sit up there and do that and just like, all right, well, it's fine. And then have to try to cover up, much like here, the angle of the story that you just had. It's hard to feel sorry for because I'm sure somebody like, well, you know, maybe he didn't remember because it's out of sequence. Okay, whose fault is that? It's why I never have any sympathy for it when they're like, well, you know, they do tape it in large chunks. Who made that decision? And I've heard on a number of occasions some people try to like, well, you know, they do say that Jeannie Buss comes in and she has her things that he has to placate to that, and you know CBS calls us. I want to believe them when they say those things to me. I want to believe them, but I have a hard time believing that. I'm sorry, I do. I am not going to sit here and be like, I know for a fact that neither Jeannie Buss nor CBS make them do anything. I can't say that. I ain't there. But I'm real close to calling bullshit on it. One, why would CBS care? Somebody answer me that. It does not air on CBS. I know that they were told that it aired on CBS, and a lot of them went around believing that it aired on CBS, and some of them put it in their profiles as seen on CBS. But WoW does not air on CBS TV. WoW is distributed by CBS Paramount Global. So what CBS executive would care in the least about WoW? It doesn't affect their daytime lineup. It doesn't affect their nighttime lineup. It doesn't affect prime time. It doesn't affect any of it. So why? It's not even on Paramount Plus anymore. So what CBS executive would care about this whatsoever? Now, the only window of opportunity that I would say that might exist is that there's always some like new hire executive that's willing to do whatever they say. So if let's just say that somebody was hired and they just say, hey, well, you go oversee that. Now, if that's the case, then sure, he might just go out there because it's busy work. And when they're there, they absolutely want to flaunt some authority or power. But for what? And then there's Jeannie Buss. Now, could I believe that she would just randomly say something like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should make Foxy Fierce the champion. Yeah, I could believe that she would say something stupid like that. Sure. But again, why would she do that? Jeannie Buss clearly does not watch this show. She probably looks at it just enough to be able to say that, look at that, I have this wrestling program. But I sincerely doubt that she watches this week to week. Enough for her to know the massive amount of continuity errors that take place here. She certainly is not listening to any criticisms about it. And I'm sure she looks at this like this is perfectly normal. We'll just tape everything for the entire year this month. And probably didn't give it a second thought. So no, why would she care other than, all right, hey, can you put this person on TV? No, I don't think that she's walking around trying to pitch angles to people. And if she did, I mean, they're probably not going to be any worse or any more stupid than any other angles that they've had. And then, of course, there's the argument of, well, so-and-so goes back and then they complained and cried and then they got their way. Now that I believe that fully. I do believe that somebody there in the roster probably saw, I'm losing. Oh, shit. I got to go talk to somebody about that. That I can buy. Because that happens everywhere. So that's not specific to WoW. But for the ones that did it, I would hope that if they try to talk WoW management, whoever that happens to be in that particular moment, or I mean, let's call a spade, they'd probably walk right up to Dave McLane. But if that were the case and they tried to talk, I would hope that they at least have a justified reason why. Other than, I'm feeling vain and I don't want to lose. Because if you are going in there telling people that you don't want to lose when that was the plan and you are offsetting whatever storyline that might have worked, then you're just as big of the problem. If you've gone in there and you've said that I don't need to lose and here's why, that's a different story. Because you might be able to justify the reasons. But if you're just doing it just because I don't want to, and that's the only thing, you're part of the problem. So anyhow, we come off of that. Sorry, I just had to vent there for a second. We come off of that, and then there's a Campanelli promo for Top Tier. Again, this is another match that took place a year ago that they're now trying to promote. For this person that allegedly had her leg broken by Top Tier, who's magically just going to show back up next week, probably in a month or two disappear all over again. Same thing with Tara Strike. I expect her to magically show up, probably do or say very little about her leg being broken, and then just disappear. Which should be interesting if she does come back, because I did see that she was supposed to be part of the roster. But, you know, to have her pop back in, and Ashley Blaze for that matter, after we've had this video package a couple of weeks ago about Kara Kai fighting her ultimate tag team partner, and then her other two tag team partners pop back up. If I saw that and I was Ashley Blaze, or specifically if I was Tara Strike, I'd be like, screw you. If she a better partner, then tag up with her. So you took the time out to have a video package done to tell you, to tell the world that we weren't any good, and you just tagging up with this one now? Good luck. Take it on your own. So we have that. Campanelli cuts a promo, and look, you cannot knock Campanelli's promo. I can't even knock her ring work. It may be because she practices for a week. I don't know. But she has great execution in that ring. Cannot take that away. I just wish that she did not have those stupid vanity belts. And that is all they are, and that's probably all they're ever going to be. Vanity belts. There wasn't any reason for having them. They're not doing anything for the show. All it does is just keep them cycled in the same sphere of the mid-card brigade that they've been locked up with for the past year. Then we go to Gabrielle Cruz and her Lifetime segment, and that's pretty much all this was. She spoke in Portuguese through, all of this. And there you have it. She showed you how to slice up some bananas and put some stuff on it. And I don't know. I wasn't that interested in it because I hate bananas. And then we get a Katie Marie Jones profile segment. She starts talking about what got her into entertainment. Now what got her into pro wrestling, but what got her into entertainment. Now, in fairness, you do not have to be some sort of pro wrestling fan from the time you were a kid to the time you're an adult in order for you to do it. I'm not going to ever say that. That's not necessary. But I will echo the sentiments of several people that were in the room that were, we was all kind of halfway paying attention to this. You're like, is this supposed to be a wrestling show? I mean, that one comment was like, I couldn't even tell. It's like, yeah, it's supposed to be, but yeah. It's like, what is she talking about? Talking about her life. I was like, and this is supposed to be wrestling, right? I was like, yeah. So there you have it. Katie Marie Jones gets her profile segment. Then McLane and Katie Marie continue to sell WoW. They introduced the segment about Jeannie Buss, and she does her normal verbiage, what I talked about earlier. Superheroes and Empowerment. That should be the name of a book. She brings up Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. They showed this, and Dave McLane talks about it. And this showed what a feud or a rivalry could do, which I was a little bit shocked to hear him say. Not that it's incorrect, but that's what pro wrestling is. Pro wrestling's been doing that for decades, preceding Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. Maybe that was the first time that he personally had witnessed a rivalry. And I don't even know if I would call it a rivalry. It was trash talk. It was trash talk that Bobby Riggs had to eat. But make no mistake about it, Bobby Riggs sold that event. And yeah, he probably deserved to lose. But people paid that. That's the part of being the heel. He walked into that thing, at least for a portion of America, he walked into that thing as the heel. Because he flat out says, like, a woman can't do that. And even an old man like me at 55 would be able to beat a woman in the prime and blah, 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 blah. So he talked mad crap. And it's the same logic that you do with most heels. If you are a good enough heel, people will pay their money to see you get beat up. It is Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a prime example of that in today's world. You notice Jake Paul does not take boxing matches that are basically outside of being an exhibition, because he didn't have to. Jake Paul is largely regarded as an unlikable person, whether that's justified or not. And people want to see him lose. But they have handpicked every opponent that he's had so that he doesn't. But people still want to see him lose. And they'll pay money to try to see him lose. They'll tune into the event to try to see him lose. Especially when they put him across the ring from somebody that's relatively beloved. That is a hallmark that is never going to go away in sports. If you hate it, people will pay money to see you go down. Now, WoW doesn't necessarily do that. In most cases, there are some that try their best to be as big of a heel as they can. But some of that is a neutered heel scenario. The closest that we just got to it was what we saw in that steel cage. But I cannot disagree. The only thing I'm adding in, yes, Dave McLane is correct. A feud, a rivalry, that it can push money. I just wanted to add in that pro wrestling has been doing that. Boxing has been doing that. It's not uncommon in sports in general. Sports are one of the great dramas of life. In whatever sport that you may be watching. They had several talking heads here. Erica Porter, aka Jungle Girl. I forget the reporter. I'm going to make sure I say that clearly. The reporter's name that was on the show. I didn't write it down because honestly, at that point, I was kind of losing interest. Again, not because of what she was saying. It was just because I'd seen it. Who else was on that thing? Oh. All due respect to her, but I really want to ask people right now, look, if you go back and you watch this thing and you see Samantha Smart on there, and you told somebody that was an AI generated person, I bet you that they would believe every word you said. God, she did not look real. And I say that because I've seen her in different environments. Like I've seen her on Instagram. I was like, okay, she looked like a normal person there. But for whatever reason, in this thing, it's like, did they take all the flaws off of her or something? It's not a hair out of place. The lighting was just right. She's just kind of sitting in the center and staring at the screen. Hair like a helmet. It's just, she looked like, all right, Chat GPT, give me Samantha Smart and have her do an interview. And that's what you got. Oh, boy. Anyhow, let me continue with that. The show ends with McLane and Kaden Reed, surprise, going on the, quote, impromptu zip line. Well, I shouldn't even say, because she did clarify that, well, I talked to the people and hooked us up and whatever. But he was so, scared of this that he went up there anyway, and she yanked him away and they ran down the street, and you can see his cartoonish face as she pulls him along when they go to commercial, which is why I was like, he is a far better host. He's fine with doing things like that. And then he gets on the zip line and he has his vlogging camera with him. So clearly he wasn't prepared to go. And he zip lines through Fremont and then he gets down. That was fun. So you got your last plug in on something that they did. All in all, it was just an episode. I can't even say thumbs up or thumbs down or good or bad or whatever. It was just an episode. And if you also told me that the Fremont Street Commission or whoever said, hey, if y'all want to be here, you better advertise the shit out of our stuff, then I would believe it. Because that's basically all that episode was. It's just, what are we doing here? Well, you got this, you got that, you got White Castle and so forth and blah, blah, blah. Hopefully, this upcoming week, they'll actually have something that you would want to see. Even though these are old matches. So I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to be entirely engaged in it. But I'll watch it because I'll be there because, again, it doesn't air in Atlanta anymore. So that's the only way I'm going to see it is if I go to work. And I have no intentions of calling out. So what is up for their upcoming episode? The one that is around the corner for me now. Let's read this and see. The title is going to be Curtain Up Las Vegas. The episode is going to be 407. For me, it'll be 163. And they wrote, it's showtime. The Wild roster has moved to the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, to bring you nonstop action on the most iconic street in the world, Fremont Street Experience. Top Tier's Candy Crush kicks off this Vegas spectacle in a singles match against all-star athlete Ashley Blaze. Later, Beach Babe Sandy Shore takes the one and only, that didn't sound right, takes the one and only Genesis. And in the main event is Miami Sweet Heat's first tag title defense since the infamous Tag Team Championship cage match. The 5-time Wild World Tag Team Champions defend against former champions themselves, Jesse Jones and Big Rig Betty. Will the Southern Brawlers be able to claim revenge for the Fab Four's vicious plot against Holly Swag? Find out only on WOW. Well, again, all of these matches have taken place. All of these matches are about a year old. I'm not sure that I can muster up enough to care, but we'll see. I want them to be able to do something well and make me want to see the show. But I don't know if they can. I mean, it's been 3 years. And as I was explaining, the heat is the desire. The heat is the desire to get people to do something. Root for the babyface, booty, see the next episode, whatever the case would be. And the show just doesn't do that for me. It has its moments where the matches can be very entertaining. And they have a lot of talented people there. And I hope that this season makes something else happen in terms of their logic, continuity, and what have you. But I have a hard time believing that it will, considering that it's October 2025 and we're watching matches now that were a year and a month ago. And then they're going to have to pick that up in November, December with new stuff. It's almost certainly a recipe for having something out of sync or screwed up. It's almost certain. But that's that. That was the episode. I hope that the ones that we got coming will change the direction of how I feel. My fingers are crossed. If you are so kind, so obligated, please check us out on our YouTube channel. Do the YouTube things, like, share, and subscribe. If you are checking this out at podcast form, well, first off, I apologize because that opening segment you probably really need to see in order to get the joke. But if you are checking it out in podcast form, then you can subscribe or rate wherever you are. But you can check those out on greater podcast platforms everywhere. If you cannot do it there, then you can always go to WPNwrestling.com That is the focal point and centerpiece for all the other stuff. I got some things I got to fix there, but it's still showing footage, matches, interviews from 2013. There are also podcasts dating back further than that, actually. And all of them have kind of found their way in their home on our website. And if you are going to do all of those things, well, then, comments are always available. Interactions are always available. Whether that be email, comments below, direct messages, if you will. The door is open for wild talent and non-talent alike. And we'll leave it at that. So, on that note, this is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and we will see you on the next go-round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.